This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Jeff Whitworth, K-State crop entomologist, kicks off today's show as he talks about how wheat stem maggots, burrowing bugs, and chinch bugs could be causing damage in crop fields. Keeping the show rolling is Ajay, Sharda, and Rod Schaub with K-State as they discuss the upcoming AI in Kansas Agriculture Conference and why technology and innovation is important to agriculture. K-State Horticulture Extension Specialist Cynthia Domenghini ends the show explaining the process for deadheading plants in the home landscape. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show talking about a few pests that K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth has been receiving questions about. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, sure. My pleasure. Anytime.
Jeff, beginning our pest conversation with the wheat stem maggot, and what is that?
It's more of a curiosity in Kansas, or at least it has been, or at least it usually is. In years past, every wheat field will have, these white heads that stick out pretty much just as the flag leaves are green and everything else is kind of turning golden or senescing. These white heads stick out, and there's many different reasons for the head to be white like that, and we've talked about those in the past. There's some pathogens and some other things, but from an entomological standpoint, there's the wheat stem maggot. That's generally what usually causes the white head in the wheat. So the way to tell is to go out, if you have some white heads, go out and just grab a hold of the head and pull. If it comes off really easily at that first joint, you look in that little joint, it looks like there's some, well, it's not eaten, but it looks like there's some tissue there. It's been chewed on a little bit. It hasn't been chewed on, but it looks like it has been messed with because the larval stage of the fly has been sucking the juice out of the plant right around that joint. So you can kind of tell. If it does that, that's the wheat stem maggot. There are usually not enough of those to cause a problem in the wheat. We usually, like I said, it's just a curiosity or sometimes a nuisance. But this year I've received 2 calls so far, and in past years I get a call once or so because if you plant corn in the wheat stubble, or if you graze the wheat and you plant corn pretty early, or for whatever reason, if you plant corn early, the adult stage of the wheat stem maggot is a fly. It's a little yellowish tan fly, and they move to the corn. They'll lay eggs on most grasses, barley, rye, wheat naturally, but they also go to corn. And again, like I said, if you just happen to plant at the right time, these plants start to emerge, they start to germinate in the wheat stubble, and these flies can lay their eggs. They lay about 1 egg per leaf, and those maggots can do a serious number on those little germinating corn plants. I've seen 2 of them this year already, and one of them actually took out about 80 acres. It did a number in about the whole field. Normally it's just a little patch here, a little patch there, but so these flies are pretty active, and they're laying eggs right now. So just a warning, if they are out there, just wait a couple of weeks, replant if that's your desire, or plant sorghum or plant something else. I don't think you have a problem. It's just all a timing problem right now.
Something else you've also been receiving questions about, burrowing bugs, and what's an indicator that producers are more likely to have them?
Yes, burrowing bugs, again, are more of a nuisance, more of a curiosity, but in years past, I've seen them cause problems. And this year, I've also had a couple of calls and seen some pretty good pictures of where burrowing bugs have actually taken out soybeans. Now, they'll feed on just about any plant. They're not host-specific, but it seems like the plants that we usually plant where they are soybeans, and all the problems that I've seen are in soybeans. The key weed is henbit. There are other weeds that burrowing bugs get under, whatever you want to call it, but if you have henbit, I almost guarantee you have burrowing bugs. So if you have a lot of henbit and you're going to spray it, you're going to kill it before you plant your soybeans or right after you plant your soybeans, be aware that it's probably full of burrowing bugs. If the burrowing bugs, the adults, a little shiny black, it's a regular hemipteran, a shield bug or a stink bug looking like, and they're shiny black with white borders. The nymphs or immatures are not. They're they're shiny red and black, and they're pretty small, but they're easily seen. And they love soybeans. They love the germinating plants. So as soon as you spray your henbit, as that henbit starts to die, they will move over to those germinating soybeans, and they will suck the juice out of the soybeans. If you just wait, again, it's all a matter of timing. If you kill that henbit a couple of weeks before your soybeans germinate or before you plant, the burrowing bugs underneath will disperse or just die because they have no more food. They can't fly. They're just small little immature nymphs, so they have to walk wherever they're going, so they can't disperse very far before finding food. So whatever source they come into, that's what they'll feed on. If it's soybeans, they will do a number on your soybeans early on. So just a heads up. Right now, a lot of guys are planting soybeans. A lot of guys are spraying. If you have a serious patch of henbit, be aware you will have burrowing bugs underneath there. And if you plant soybeans into that, you might have to replant. I've not seen anything yet that will cure an infestation of burrowing bugs. And again, they're just small, usually small areas, but they can be aggravating. So keep that in mind.
A pest we also talk about every year and want to talk about again this year then, chinch bugs.
Oh, yes. We'll talk about it again probably before the year's over with. Chinch bugs, they overwinter in bunch grasses. By that, I mean in the fall, after they leave the sorghum and after they leave the wheat, they go to someplace where the bunch grasses have nice, thick thatch areas around the root systems. In places where we have minimum till, they've actually been able to overwinter in the the residue in the field in past years. So the point is, they leave the field, they leave the wheat field, they leave the sorghum field, and this time of year they move back, or maybe a month ago they moved back into the wheat. They'll feed on any grass, so they'll feed on the wheat. Generally, it doesn't bother the wheat because of the number of plants there are per acre versus the overwintering chinch bugs. That's when they're at their lowest population level. But the key here is they've been feeding. The ones I just have seen in the last 3 or 4 days are mating, and they have mated, and they're laying eggs. Now we're being flooded or being inundated with nymphs. When they first hatch from eggs, they're little tiny, really small red dots almost on the ground. They're really tough to see in a wheat field. But my recommendation right now, as that wheat is senescing, as it's turning yellow, golden, whatever you want to call it, go out. If you're thinking about planting sorghum adjacent to your wheat, or if you're thinking about planting corn adjacent to your wheat, or you have recently, go out and check the wheat, take a 1 square foot sample. If you have one chinch bug in that square foot, and do that in 3 or 4 different areas along the side of the field that you're considering planting sorghum adjacent to, if you have one chinch bug, you're going to have problems. They're going to swarm out of there in another, when we're going to harvest, another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending upon where you are around the state. Those nymphs are going to swarm out of there. They can only walk. They can't fly. They can't jump. They can't hop. But they're going to walk out of those wheat fields. That's why we call it the walking migration. And they're going to be looking for a plant to feed on. It's a grass. Generally, if it's sorghum or corn, they can really do a number on that just because of the sheer numbers. Remember, it only takes 1 per square foot in the wheat to indicate that you need to do something. Either there are several different methods we can do to manage this walking migration. Either hold off planting for a couple of weeks, plant 50 yards away from the field. Seed treatments, insecticide seed treatments, those work. But remember, the little nymph has to suck a little juice out of the plant to get the toxin. And in so doing, that can actually kill the plant, especially when there's 100 nymphs per seedling or 1,000 nymphs per seedling. That can overwhelm the insecticide. So I've seen the plants dead with furry, dead nymphs just because it killed them both, but they still overcame the insecticide. So keep that in mind. There are several different ways to manage this walking generation. My point is, right now is the ideal time, just as it's senescing, just as it's turning yellow, get out and sample. And if you have one nymph per square foot. It doesn't have to be a nymph, it could be a doll also. One chinch bug. You're going to have problems if you're going to plant within 50 feet adjacent to that senescing wheat field between now and when it is harvested.
When should the chinch bugs no longer be a problem for the year?
In December. This walking generation is usually the major problem, just because of the timing when we plant sorghum and or corn. But this generation will mature, and then we have the second generation, which will fly around. Oftentimes, again, if we have adequate moisture, the plants can overcome a lot of the chinch bug feeding because they suck the juice out of the plant. They're competing with the moisture. The problem with chinch bugs, they get around the base of the plant. As the plant grows, they get behind the leaf sheath, and it's really tough to get an insecticide to where they are. These insecticides are contact insecticides, so they have to get in contact with the chinch bug in order to kill them. Plus, you got to use more gallonage to get through the foliage to get around the base of the plant, or use drop nozzles or directed sprays or something where that spray is getting down to the chinch bug. So after that, then they're usually not a problem. But then as the plant puts on the berry, the kernel starts to, ripen, and it's nice, succulent. A lot of times the chinch bugs will go up and start feeding on those kernels or those berries. Just for that short amount of time when that berry is filling and it's nice and succulent and soft, there is a fungus that sometimes helps us control chinch bugs naturally, but I've not seen the fungus in chinch bugs for probably the last 10 years.
Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
My pleasure, anytime.
That was K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about an upcoming event, which is AI in Kansas Agriculture Conference, with Frontier District Livestock Production Agent Rod Schaub and Professor and Director for ID3A at K-State, Ajay Sharda. Rod, Ajay, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Ajay, as we're talking about this AI in Kansas Agriculture Conference, what is it?
This AI is definitely taking everybody by surprise, and it's taking over a lot of activities we do around agriculture, whether it is around machine systems or animal production or anything beyond those things, really augmenting what humans can do at a much higher level, bringing a lot more accuracy, autonomy in making decisions by these automation interventions, giving a lot more efficiency, enhancing productivity of people, and absolutely at the end of the day, giving people a chance to look at data and what has been done using these AI approaches to really make their operation much more efficient, productive, and profitable. So the idea about having this AI in Kansas Agriculture Conference is to bring all of those things in front of farmers and producers in Kansas, talk about where we are, in terms of historical perspective, how is AI being used currently, what kind of solutions which are currently available, which are already bringing value to production agriculture, and then talk also something about why AI, why it is important and why should we trust the systems which are working for us. And then it also brings some of the industry leaders, some of the producers who will be talking about these things all along. They will be talking not only ag, but also talking about livestock production and how we can use some of these technologies in that part. And then it will summarize, or it will conclude with some live demos in terms of what these technologies has to offer. So it's a very holistic, very short but very power-packed meeting, or what you can call as a conference. If people or anybody is interested in learning what is AI, where it stands, what are the possible solutions, in overall agriculture scheme for Kansas, and where are we going with that?
And as we're talking about AI today, talking about artificial intelligence, and Rod, why did you see this collaboration between ID3A and the Frontier Extension District important?
Well, this is truly extending the university to the people. You know, the folks at ID3A, they are scientists, they're researchers, they're professors, department heads. And with this and the new regime that we have at K-State, I think this is the beginning of a lot of collaborations that maybe have never taken place before. So I think this is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think that's why it's good to work with these folks.
And AJ, why do you see this collaboration as something that's important?
Well, Shelby, it's all about people who are going to use the technology. We have traditionally maybe sometimes worked with the technology first. You know, we take some feedback, right? We start to work around it, and we continue to evolve based on their feedback. I think this collaboration, working with the KSRE folks up front, I think it is so vital, and I think it is so absolutely important to understand the ground needs of our producers in terms of how would they like to see these technologies on their operation. What will bring value? What is the thing which will make the use or adoption easy? How can profitability be evaluated so that they can make a decision on adoption? And more importantly, when we talk about AI, there are a lot of like a black box solution kind of a thing. We want our producers, our end users to be part of the journey in terms of the development and evolution of these technologies so that they have trust in these systems, their opinion and feedback is valued and is incorporated while we develop those solutions, so that when we bring the solutions back to them, there are very little doubts or questions because that's built for them based on their feedback. So that's why I think these kind of collaborations are so vital, that we want to engage with our end users, not only when the things are ready, but during the process of developing and evolving these technologies.
How does this support the push for agriculture and innovation in Kansas?
Well, skilled labor, is really hard for farmers to find. Skilled labor in general is hard to find for the farm, and hopefully, some of these new technologies and AI will take over some of those roles, make things easier. We'll have more information, so we'll have more data. We'll make better decisions and be able to make those more timely, hopefully.
Rod is so right about it. When we talk about agriculture, it is so vital to Kansas economy and the economic vitality of the state itself. Agriculture is also front and center in terms of what we do throughout the state, whether it is crops, whether we are talking about animal production or anything which is all allied industries in and around agriculture. So when we talk about ag, it's the heartbeat, right? And obviously, if we really want to be competitive, both in the domestic and international markets, if we want to be competitive in terms of how our farmers produce, and when we talk about competitive, it's all about being very, very efficient, very productive, cost effective, and yet have the most bang to the buck in terms of return on investment and profitability part of it. We all know that we're not adding a whole lot of working population to a lot of our states in the Midwest. So we really need our systems to become more efficient, which can work in sync and to enhance the efficiency and the way people work with these technologies on farm. So I think that's the reason with ag being the front and center, innovation is so vital so that we can continue to help our producers, whether in crop or animal production, to continue to incorporate those technologies which are so vital for their day-to-day operation. Rod talked about data. It is. We know that we are collecting a lot of data. We may be missing some data which we need, but I think we are not utilizing the data which we already have on hand. That data has tons of hidden knowledge in it, and I think we really need to do a great job or a much better job in terms of understanding the hidden nuances of what we can sift from data, whether we can learn how good our operators are working, how effective a certain hybrid is, or a utilization of certain nutrition program or anything like that. So I think data is the centerpiece where we can really learn what was the impact or the effect of using a certain intervention. Should we go for it or not? Do we need to change courses? So both from tech development, or utilization and the data part of it, this has to be brought at a level where our producers can use that in a very easy to use fashion, yet having ability to access knowledge-based decisions which are easy to implement on farm.
Rod, if people are interested in this AI in Kansas Agriculture Conference, can you share with us some of the details?
The meeting is going to be held July the 22nd. We'll start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, probably go through about 8 o'clock. You can kind of come and go as you'd like, but registration is required, and it is free. However, like I said, we do have to have registration, and you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can go to the ID3A website, and under events, you can click on the AI in Kansas Agriculture and find the registration there, or you can go to frontierdistrict.k-state.edu. You can also register there. As far as the agenda goes, we've got a really fun and exciting day, I think. At 1 o'clock, Dr. Marshall Stewart will come and he'll welcome and introduce the program for the day. At 1:30, the program actually starts. The first topic that we'll talk about is ag tech, the last 10 years to modern robotics. The next topic would be artificial intelligence and its trustability. Then we'll go to using drones in pasture management, and this will include a drone demonstration. We'll take a short break. We'll come back. We'll talk about revolutionizing ranching using virtual fence. And the last one of the day will be return on investment. Are precision tools worth the cost? And all of these are going to be discussed by a panel. On the panel, we'll have someone from K-State. There will be an industry partner that will be on there, and there will be a producer or two on each of these panels. And that's how we're going to present this. It's going to be, we're going to talk about the different things that are going on. And then about 5:30, from 5:30 to 8, there should be a networking meal. We'll visit booths, and we will also have demonstrations to round out the day.
Where is this taking place?
It is taking place at the Ranch House Event Center, which is located at 28784 U.S. Highway 75, just south of Linden, Kansas, about 3 miles.
Rod, Ajay, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Shelby. Thanks for
Thank you.
That was Frontier District Livestock Production Agent Rod Schaub and Professor and Director for ID3A at K-State, Ajay Sharda, discussing the AI in Kansas Agriculture Conference. In today's show notes on agtoday.net, I will place links if you'd like to read more about it. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. Deadheading, also known as spent blossom removal, is the practice of removing faded or dead flower heads from plants to encourage more blooms. K-State instructor and horticulture extension specialist Cynthia Domenghini discusses when and how to deadhead plants in the home landscape. Cynthia, we're kind of approaching that time where it's time to start thinking about deadheading plants.
Right. We've had some solid time out in the garden where our plants have been growing and producing some blooms for us. And so inevitably we're going to be seeing some of those blooms starting to fade and not look so nice. So it's a great time to start brushing up on your deadheading practices.
So what do we do? How do we get started?
What I like to do with my own garden is ideally daily take a walk through and scout around. Deadheading is something that if you just keep up with it on a daily basis, it's not a huge task to be completed. It's not real challenging. It can actually be pretty fun because it doesn't require a lot of labor and because you notice the garden cleaning up quickly. And so what you're going to do is just initially look for those blooms that are not looking so great anymore. And depending on what type of plant it is, you may be able to just snap that bloom off with your fingernails, or you may decide to walk through the garden with your pruners and snip the stem with the pruners.
I think you also mentioned that it's nice to make sure we do this after a heavy storm as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes when we get these big Kansas storms coming through, some of the plants will look a little bit shabby afterwards. And so that may require deadheading. Maybe the blooms look nice right before the storm, but then afterwards you may decide just to go ahead and snip off those blooms, especially if you've noticed some more severe damage to your plants by taking away the energy required for setting seed from those blooms. The plant can revive itself and repair those leaves that got damaged by sending out new growth, things like that. So what you're looking for is when you're snipping off those blooms, you're going to cut the stem just back to the next set of leaves, typically, which is called the node. Then you can discard those blooms in the compost bin.
And this is for annuals and perennials?
Exactly. Most commonly we see it with annuals because we don't want the annuals to be, we don't want the annuals to be turning those flowers into seed heads and setting seed. So by snipping off the blooms before they develop seed, it encourages the plant to continue producing more flowers rather than going to seed and preparing for the next generation. Some perennials, though, will benefit from deadheading as well and just being tidied up like that. But there's also some perennials that have really lovely seed heads. For example, coneflower. The seed heads that develop on coneflowers have a really lovely color and texture to them. And so some people decide to just leave those blooms intact and enjoy that full progression, the full life cycle there.
What are maybe some of the more common garden plants that would benefit from deadheading?
Marigolds, petunias, geraniums, snapdragons, salvia, yarrow, those are all examples of plants that will benefit from regular deadheading. They will continue to send out new blooms. You'll also notice that by deadheading your plants, you may get bushier growth. So early on in the season, even right around now, like if your zinnias are getting real tall and gangly, but they don't have a lot of horizontal growth, if you deadhead them a couple times, you'll notice that they start to bush out a bit more and kind of get a more uniform growth, which is beneficial for the plant. And I mean, they just look nicer that way as well. But one of the other big benefits, I should say, of taking those regular walks through the garden to do deadheading is you can also monitor for other problems that could be happening in the garden. Taking a look at those plants up close, looking for pests or diseases that may be present, and just anything else that might not be desirable in the garden. If you get yourself in that habit of taking a regular garden walk, you can keep on top of the problems before they become too much of an issue.
That's Horticulture Extension Specialist Cynthia Domenghini with information on deadheading plants in the home landscape. If you have further questions, contact your local Extension office. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.